Okay, we're back again here at the Greatest Sports Channel. And again, my name is Mark Megna. I wrote a book called The Greatest, in which I was able to rank all the greatest players in the history of baseball using an absolute adjusted slugging percentage relative to the era that they played in. So we were able to get this ratio of who the greatest players were. And this was necessary because you had the dead ball era from 1870 to 1920, the live ball era when Ruth was hitting all the homers. You had rule changes like the mound was raised in the 60s and the strikeout zone was expanded. So there was a lot of pitcher dominance. And then you had the steroid era of the 90s and 2000s. Well, you can throw all that out, and if you use the absolute ratios that I have in this book, now we can have an intelligent discussion on how they perform relative to the era that they played in. And I didn't intend on this, but there were a lot of players in the book that I noticed made the Hall of Fame that shouldn't be there, and there were a lot of players, about 100, that should have been inducted and weren't for whatever reasons, weren't on good teams or weren't in big markets, or the voters simply didn't know what they were doing. I was also able to analyze the defense using their fielding percentage relative to the league fielding percentage and their range relative to the league range. And Derek Jeter I had as the worst fielding shortstop of the 30 shortstops I had in the book. And I didn't think anything of it, but I've been getting a lot of questions about it since they published the book. And I've been digging into why this is the case. And it's because he had very poor range. And we did some other videos and we went through specifically why he should not have received any of his 5 Gold Gloves, and you can check that out. But it's been determined by statisticians and Bill James and sabermetric analysis that Derek Jeter played very shallow and one step to his left towards second base his entire career. And that explained why he had poor range his entire career. He wasn't able to get the balls. And apparently, this was a very conscious decision, either by himself or by his coaches, that he must have had a poor arm because they conceded the plays to his right in between short and third. So they wanted him to make the plays that he could get to, and he was successful at doing this because he was about an average fielding shortstop, just fielding percentage. But it's been well documented that he's cost the Yankees many runs over his career, and you can look this up. This is well documented that he is a liability at shortstop. And the fact that he's a shortstop should be held against him in the Hall of Fame voting, not something to admire. Um, so it's very strange that this was the case. They brought Alex Rodriguez to the Yankees after A-Rod was Gold Glove at Texas in '02 and '03. It was a legitimate Gold Glove fielding shortstop, and they put the Gold Glove at third base and left the poor fielding shortstop Derek Jeter at short. And this is completely unknown as to why the Yankees did this. It's also very well documented that the general manager in 2007 met with Derek Jeter and voiced his concern that Derek Jeter was costing um, runs on the field. And this is even after he was awarded the 3 Gold Gloves in '04, '05, '06, and then later again received them in 9 and 10. All of them were unwarranted, and you can check out the other video as to the reasons why. Um, Shortstops are overrepresented in the Hall of Fame. There's 24 of them. Of the 241 people in the players in the Hall of Fame that I was able to analyze that actually played in the major leagues, Um, there's 24 shortstops. There's only 16 catchers, for example. A catcher is involved in every pitch of every game, um, 27 outs, and a catcher is way more important than a shortstop. Derek Jeter only got to 4 balls every 9 innings. The league average was 4.5 over his 20-year career, and that's how we were able to identify his poor range. But he only gets to 4 balls. A good shortstop gets to about 5. Um, but a catcher's way more important because they're involved in every pitch. And there's only 16 catchers in the Hall of Fame. So I contend that the amount of catchers needs to be doubled for one uh, before to even out the real worth of these players. Also, third baseman, there's only 16 of them. They get to about 2 to 3 balls. A shortstop, as I mentioned, Jeter only got to 4 balls, so there's not that much of a difference there. Second baseman, there were about 20 of those in the Hall of Fame. Also, pitchers, there's only 74 in the Hall of Fame. That needs to be about doubled at least. A pitcher is as valuable as a player throughout a season. A pitcher pitches every 5 innings, and let's say he pitches 7 innings, times 3 outs is 21 outs that he's involved in, directly involved in. A batter who gets 4 at bats per game for every 5 games is involved in about 20 outs at the plate and only a few plays out in the field per game times 5. So that's about 30 or 40 plays um, over that same 5 game period. So there should be many more pitchers in the Hall of Fame than there currently are. And I wanted to identify all of these players that should be inducted before Derek Jeter gets in. He should not be a first vote inductee. And this is probably very foreign for people to understand or think because he's on this Hall of Fame tour now in his last season. These are all players that should be in. And forget this idea about steroids. Using the relative rankings, we have how they performed relative to all other players in their era. Also, I wanted to mention, I have Jeter as the 361st best player of all time. Even if you don't consider his defense, I only have him as the 371st best offensive player all time, and that does not include pitchers. So I just want to take the time and take a few minutes to mention all these guys that should be in before Jeter gets in. Barry Bonds, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Richie Allen, we had as the 20th best player of all time. It got passed over. Did not get along well with the media, contrary to Derek Jeter. Ken Griffey Jr., Jim Thome, Albert Pujols eventually get in. Alex Rodriguez, Larry Walker, Cesar Cedeno, Darrell Evans, who we have as the best fielding third baseman of all time. Tim Raines, Reggie Smith, Jeff Bagwell, Dwight Evans, Fred Lynn, Eric Davis, Bobby Bonds, Ken Williams, Norm Cash, Jim Wynn, Frank Howard, Lance Berkman, Jim Edmonds, Rafael Palmeiro, Jack Clark, David Ortiz, Orlando Cepeda, Manny Ramirez, and I know I'm probably boring you with this list, but I have to do it because there's so many guys that have to get in before Derek Jeter. Sammy Sosa, Todd Helton, Gary Sheffield, Vladimir Guerrero, Gil Hodges, Darryl Strawberry, Edgar Martinez, Kirk Gibson, Juan Gonzalez, Boog Powell, Miguel Cabrera eventually get in. Tip O'Neill had a short career. Fred McGriff, but short careers shouldn't hold you out. If Rizzuto got in and only played 10 solid years. Bobby Abreu, Keith Hernandez, Greg Luzinski, Pedro Guerrero, Carlos Delgado, Craig Nettles, Rick Monday, Dale Murphy, Ellis Burks, Rico Carty, Tony Oliva, Cy Youngs, Brian Giles, Jason Giambi, George Foster, Ivan Rodriguez, Bobby Grich, Ryan Howard, Gary Gaetti, Mike Piazza, Al Oliver, Bill Dalen, who we do have as the fourth best shortstop of all time, Charlie Keller, Chipper Jones, who will get in, Alan Trammell, we have better than Jeter, and Dave Parker. Plus, I mentioned about the catchers, how they are underrepresented. Um, just to mention a few more of them, Javi Lopez got passed over. Ted Simmons, Walker Cooper, Smokey Burgess, Jorge Posada, Mike Piazza, we mentioned, Bill Freehan, Mickey Tettleton, Thurman Munson, and Elston Howard, and Bob Boone, Yadier Molina eventually get in, and B.J. Surhoff should be considered. Had a 19-year career. Then you get into the pitchers that are also underrepresented. Roger Clemens, Pedro Martinez, Smokey Joe Wood, Randy Johnson, Kevin Brown's been passed over, absolutely insane. Andy Messersmith, Fred Toney, Ed Chicote, Dean Chance, who won the Cy Young in '64, Dutch Leonard, Vida Blue, Mike Cuellar, Sam McDowell, Mel Stottlemyre, Ron Guidry, Wilbur Wood, Dave McNally, Mariano Rivera, who will get in, John John Hiller, Dan Quisenberry, who was better than Bruce Sutter in this book, played the same amount of years, Sparky Lyle, and then some other ones I didn't even address in this book because I didn't realize how severe the problem was of underrepresentation of the pitchers, of Brett Saberhagen, Oral Hershiser, Dave Steve, and you can mention a lot of other pitchers. So Derek Jeter should not be a first vote Hall of Fame inductee and was not a good fielding shortstop.